A second flood is bearing down on the same Nepali valley that was scoured empty 2 days ago. The first one killed at least 469 people and left more than 1,500 missing across Nepal and China's Tibet region. Whole settlements at the border crossing are gone. Market, helipad, customs post, more than 300 vehicles carried off, and bodies have been recovered 150 miles downstream. For years, the disaster this valley was told to prepare for was an earthquake. Rasuwa sits about 40 miles north of Kathmandu, in the country that lost nearly 9,000 people in 2015, and the plans, the drills, and the building rules were all written around shaking ground. But what emptied this valley on Wednesday arrived on a clear morning, with no rain behind it at all. Two things are still coming in this. What satellite images found on a slope 17,000 feet up, and why every rescue crew in the valley was pulled off the river on Friday and sent uphill. But first, what the water did in 30 minutes. The International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, the regional science body based in Kathmandu, reported that the flood wave lifted the Trishuli River by 30 feet in half an hour at Galchhi. Further downstream at Malekhu, the water climbed about 23 feet in that same half hour. The United States Geological Survey logged the seismic signal at 8:37 in the morning Nepal time, about 29 miles north of Gosainkonda, and first published it as a magnitude 4.4 earthquake before revising it into what it really was, the sound of a mountain coming apart. The flood did not follow an earthquake. The flood was the earthquake reading. Timur, the Nepali village that sits at the Rasuwagadhi crossing, lost its market and its helipad. Helicopter pilot Subhash Khadka, flying over it on the first day, said the village was barely visible from the air. The customs office and the border port were destroyed outright. Rasuwa's chief district officer, Narendra Pariyar, confirmed there had been no rainfall at all at district headquarters that morning. The sky was clear and the river still rose 30 feet. Here is the chronology, in the order it happened. High above the Lhende Khola, a small tributary stream about 12 miles northeast of the Rasuwagadhi border crossing, a section of glacier and rock roughly 2,000 feet wide, broke away from a slope at around 17,000 feet. It fell close to 3,900 feet. Ice, rock, and debris hit the narrow stream bed at the bottom and did not simply wash through it. The mass plugged the channel and held it shut, and water began stacking up behind a dam that no one had built. No one was watching, and no one had time to measure. Then the plug failed. Everything the mountain had been holding released at once, and the flood that came out of it was not water. It was a slurry of rock, ice, mud, and shattered forest, and it moved down the gorge at speeds researchers have estimated near 110 miles an hour. It ran out of Tibet, into the Bhote Koshi, into the Trishuli, and tore through a stretch of river roughly 45 miles long. In some settlements, the flood ran 260 feet above the normal river level. Sarthak Shrestha, a remote sensing associate at ICIMOD, examined the satellite record and put it plainly. The evidence indicates an avalanche above Siafurbisi blocked the river, and the flood followed. That single sentence explains why sirens never sounded and why nothing in the weather forecast could have warned anybody. There was no storm to forecast. The damage did not stop at the villages. Nepal lost a large piece of its electricity system in a single morning. The Nepal Electricity Authority reported that 431 megawatts of generating capacity were knocked off the national grid, with another 470 megawatts of projects still under construction damaged as well. 6 major installations were hit, including the Rasuwagadhi plant, the Chilime plant, Trishuli 3A, the Trishuli 3B hub substation, the Devagat station, and the Trishuli station itself. 41 bridges were damaged, and about 26 miles of road were washed away. 20 schools were damaged across Rasuwa, Nuwakot, and Dading. Nepal's preliminary estimate of total losses is around 200 billion rupees, roughly $1.5 billion, in a country whose entire annual budget is a fraction of what rebuilding this will cost. Now the second thread, the one that turned a Nepali disaster into an international one. The Rasuwagadhi crossing is a trekking gateway and a trade route, and it was busy on a Wednesday morning at the tail end of monsoon season. Nepal's tourism department has 668 tourists from 34 countries listed as unaccounted for. Indians, Americans, Britons, Australians, Canadians, and Chinese nationals are all on that list. 9 South Korean workers are on it. So are the people who staffed the border itself. 15 customs employees and 4 immigration employees are missing, along with 44 Nepali Army personnel, 28 police officers, and 13 from the armed police force. The people whose job was to run the crossing went into the water with it. The water did not stay in the mountains either. It carried on out of Rasuwa into Nuwakot and Dading and kept going, with impacts reported as far down as Gorkha and Chitwan, on a river system that eventually feeds the Narayani and then crosses into India. Dading's chief district officer, Laxmi Prasad Pandey Gautam, put security personnel along the Trishuli and warned that rising levels could reach parts of Nuwakot and Dading. What the people on the bank saw was not a rising river. Ajay Shrestha, a resident, described it as water arriving the way it arrives when a dam bursts. A local businessman, Raju Bhatal, said his entire house had been swept away. A teacher named Manoj Mishra watched around 9 trucks go into the current at once and called it a heartbreaking thing to see. No siren, no forecast, no warning. On a clear morning. On the Chinese side, in Girong County in Tibet's Shigatse region, authorities have reported 5 dead and 558 missing. And Chinese state broadcaster CCTV has said roughly 260 of those missing are foreign nationals. Premier Li Qiang traveled to the disaster zone on Thursday, and President Xi Jinping ordered an all-out search. In Nepal, more than 9,000 security personnel were deployed, including around 4,200 from the Army. 351 people were lifted out by helicopter. On Friday, soldiers reached about 350 workers trapped inside a tunnel at the Upper Trishuli hydropower project and got them out alive, an operation confirmed by Army spokesperson Raja Ram Basnet. Prakash Pokral, a geologist with Nepal's National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Authority, has been part of the effort to establish what actually came down the mountain, because the answer to that question decides whether the valley can be reopened or has to stay closed. That was the good news of the week, and it lasted a few hours because of what was building back at the top of the valley. The debris that came down had also created a new lake in Tibet, near the confluence of the Lhende Khola and the Purapu Tsangpo. China's Ministry of Water Resources measured it at roughly 530 million gallons of water by Thursday morning, and warned that another 800 million gallons was expected to pour into it over the following 3 days. The warning from Beijing was explicit. The lake was already overflowing and at high risk of breaching. On Friday, it breached. Pariyar said the Nepali Army had just informed him the lake had gone, and that is the answer to the second question from earlier. The rescue crews were not pulled off the river because the search was finished. They were pulled off because a fresh surge of water was on its way down the same channel that had already killed 469 people, and there was no way to know how much of it would arrive. Nepal police moved along the Trishuli, stopping traffic and taking people to higher ground. Recovery teams, road crews, and families still looking for relatives all had to leave the bank at once in the middle of the only window that matters for finding anybody alive. Money and supplies started moving almost immediately, which is its own measure of how bad this is. The United Kingdom pledged £5 million. The United Nations released $2 million from its Central Emergency Response Fund. South Korea committed $1 million, with a further $5 million from the Dusan Group. Sri Lanka pledged $1 million, the United States $500,000, the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies 1 million Swiss francs, and India sent about 55 tons of relief supplies over the border. Nepal's Prime Minister Balendra Shah went to the zone himself to see it. None of that changes the arithmetic of a valley where the road is gone for 26 miles and 41 bridges are down, which is why so much of the response is still being flown in. So why did a mountain face that had stood for a very long time let go on that specific morning? This is the part that matters beyond Nepal. Rijan Bhaktayasta, a climate researcher and professor at Kathmandu University, has said the risk has not passed, and that rising temperatures increase the likelihood of glaciers melting, of ice and rock breaking apart, and of avalanches in the Himalayas. The mechanism is not complicated. Glacier ice acts as both insulation and a buttress on a steep face, and permafrost is the frozen cement holding fractured rock together. Thin the ice, warm the permafrost, and a slope that was stable for centuries becomes a slope that is merely stable for now. Glaciers across the Hindu Kush Himalaya lost ice 65% faster in the decade to 2020 than in the decade before it, and Nepal's glaciers have lost roughly a third of their ice volume in 30 years. The inventory is already written down. A joint assessment by ICIMOD and the United Nations Development Program cataloged 3,624 glacial lakes across Nepal, India, and Tibet, and classified 47 of them as potentially dangerous, 21 of those inside Nepal. That study describes lakes. What failed on Wednesday was not a lake on that list at all. It was a slope, and slopes are not inventoried the same way. This valley had also already been warned once. On the 8th of July, 2025, a glacial outburst on the same Lhende River sent a flood down the same corridor and destroyed the bridge at the crossing. It took out the bridge at the same crossing, made the news for about a day, and by this August, the crossing was back in full use with customs, immigration, and trekking traffic running through it. The same watercourse, the same border, the same mechanism, and 13 months later it happened again at a scale nobody had planned for. The last event of comparable human cost in this district came in 2015, when a debris avalanche, triggered by the Gorkha earthquake, buried the village of Langtang and killed more than 300 people. That one at least had an earthquake to blame. As of right now, the confirmed toll stands at least 469 dead in Nepal and 5 in Tibet, with more than 1,500 people unaccounted for and 258 bodies recovered so far. Around 1,200 people have been displaced from at least 3 villages, and 1,054 people have been evacuated from the affected area, including 55 tourists. The barrier lake has breached, water levels behind it dropped, and Nepal police are holding the Trishuli corridor clear while they wait to see how much of it arrives downstream. Rebuilding work has been suspended. What officials are watching next is whether the slope that failed has finished failing. A second seismic signal, magnitude 4.2, was recorded roughly 3 hours after the first, which means the mountain moved twice on Wednesday, and nobody upstream can say with confidence that it is done. Subscribe for the real numbers on the next one.